The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office as I reviewed the final interview schedule for today's senior marketing director position. At the top of the list, highlighted in yellow by my assistant, was a name that made me pause. Jessica Brooks. My sister. The same Jessica who, just 3 hours earlier, had stood in our parents' kitchen delivering what she thought was the final blow to my already damaged reputation. I'm Sophia Brooks, though Jessica had taken to calling me the family failure for the past 5 years. At 31, I was the younger sister who dropped out of Harvard Business School, disappointed our parents, and apparently wasted my potential on silly tech ventures that no one in my family understood or respected. What they didn't know was that those silly tech ventures had grown into Titan Industries, a digital marketing empire valued at $4.2 billion. What they didn't know was that the modest apartment I lived in was in a building I owned. What they didn't know was that their embarrassment of a daughter had become one of the youngest female CEOs in Fortune 500 history. And in exactly 27 minutes, Jessica would walk into my boardroom for the most important interview of her career, completely unaware that her future rested in the hands of the sister she'd spent years belittling. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my chief operating officer. Brooks' interview moved to conference room A per your request. Full panel assembled. This should be interesting. Marcus was one of the few people who knew about my family situation. He'd watched me build this company from a tiny startup to a global powerhouse while my own family remained oblivious to my success. He'd also seen the hurt in my eyes every time I returned from a family gathering where I was treated like the disappointing child who couldn't get her life together. I pulled up Jessica's resume on my tablet. Impressive, I had to admit. MBA from Wharton, 3 years at McKinsey, 2 years at a boutique consulting firm specializing in brand strategy. She'd built a solid career in marketing, though nothing compared to what I'd achieved in the same time frame. More importantly, she'd built her career while constantly reminding everyone that she wasn't like her irresponsible sister. Every family dinner for the past 5 years had featured Jessica's subtle digs about my choices, my lifestyle, my apparent lack of ambition. The irony was delicious. Titan Industries was the company every marketing professional in the city wanted to work for. We'd revolutionized digital advertising through AI-driven consumer behavior prediction, created campaigns that had redefined entire industries, and offered compensation packages that made other firms look like internships. Jessica had been trying to get an interview with us for 8 months. I thought back to this morning's confrontation in Mom's kitchen. I'd stopped by to drop off a birthday gift for Dad, a first edition of his favorite novel that had cost more than Jessica's monthly rent, though I'd let them assume it was a used copy from a bookstore. "What are you doing here so early?" Jessica had asked, looking perfectly put together in her interview suit. "Don't you have a coffee shop to run or something?" The coffee shop. That was her latest theory about my income source. She'd noticed that I spent a lot of time at various cafes with my laptop and concluded that I must work for one of them. The idea that I might be running business meetings or managing a global empire from those quiet corners had never occurred to her. "Just dropping off Dad's gift," I'd said, placing the wrapped book on the counter. "Right. Well, I hope you're not planning to hang around. I have the most important interview of my life today, and I can't afford any complications." Complications. Jessica had turned to face me fully, her expression cold and calculated. "Sophia, you're an embarrassment to our name. You're 31 years old with no real career, no savings, no prospects. The last thing I need is for anyone to know we're related." Mom had tried to intervene. "Jessica, that's harsh." "No, Mom, it needs to be said. We've all been tiptoeing around this for years. Sophia dropped out of Harvard, has bounced between random jobs, and lives like a college student. Today I'm interviewing with Titan Industries, the most prestigious marketing firm in the country. I cannot have my career derailed by association with someone who represents everything they wouldn't want in an employee." She'd stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "So please, for once in your life, stay away from successful people. Don't embarrass this family any more than you already have." I'd simply nodded and left, saying nothing about the fact that in 3 hours, she'd be sitting across from me in a conference room, hoping I'd give her the career opportunity she desperately wanted. Now, sitting in my executive chair overlooking the city skyline, I opened the folder containing Jessica's application materials. Her cover letter was particularly interesting. "Titan Industries represents everything I aspire to achieve in my career. innovation, excellence, and transformative impact on the marketing industry. I have dedicated my professional life to reaching this moment, and I believe my unique combination of strategic thinking and creative execution makes me the ideal candidate for your senior marketing director position. She had no idea how right she was about this being her ideal position. She also had no idea that her embarrassing sister had specifically requested to be part of the interview panel when her application came through our HR department 2 months ago. My assistant Lauren knocked on the door. "Ms. Brooks, the interview panel is assembled. Jessica Brooks arrives in 15 minutes. Perfect. Has everyone reviewed her background?" "Yes, and..." Lauren paused, a slight smile playing at her lips. "The team is very curious about your decision to personally conduct this interview." I stood, smoothing my tailored navy suit. "Well, it's always important to meet potential family members." "Family members?" "Future corporate family," I clarified, though Lauren's knowing look suggested she wasn't entirely convinced by my explanation. Conference Room A was our most impressive interview space. Panoramic city views, a polished marble table that could seat 20, and digital displays showing real-time data from our current marketing campaigns. The numbers alone, engagement rates, conversion statistics, revenue figures, would be enough to make any marketing professional salivate. My interview panel was already assembled. Marcus Chin, our COO, Sarah Williams, our current marketing director, and David Park, our head of strategic partnerships. 3 of the most respected names in digital marketing, all waiting to meet the candidate who'd somehow secured a personal interview with the CEO. "Remind me why you're conducting this interview personally?" Sarah asked as we reviewed Jessica's portfolio. "We've hired dozens of marketing directors without CEO involvement." "Special circumstances," I replied. "Trust me, this one requires a personal touch." At exactly 2 p.m. Lauren's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Brooks has arrived. Send her in." I positioned myself at the head of the table, back to the door, ostensibly reviewing documents on my tablet. My heart rate increased slightly, not from nervousness but from anticipation. 5 years of being dismissed, belittled, and treated like a failure were about to come full circle. "Ms. Brooks," Lauren announced from the doorway, "please come in. The interview panel is ready for you." I heard Jessica's confident heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she entered the room. Her voice, when she spoke, carried that perfectly modulated professional tone she'd perfected over years of client presentations. "Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Jessica Brooks, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here at Titan Industries." Sarah stood to greet her. "Welcome, Jessica. I'm Sarah Williams, Marketing Director. This is Marcus Chin, our COO, and David Park, Head of Strategic Partnerships." "And," Marcus said with barely concealed amusement, "our CEO wanted to personally conduct this interview." I turned around slowly, allowing the recognition to dawn gradually on Jessica's face. The transformation was extraordinary. Her confident smile froze, then cracked, then disappeared entirely. The color drained from her cheeks as if someone had opened a valve. "Hello, Jessica," I said calmly, extending my hand for a professional handshake. "Welcome to Titan Industries. I'm Sophia Brooks, Chief Executive Officer." The silence that followed was profound. Jessica's hand hung limply in mine, her mouth opening and closing without producing sound. Her carefully prepared introduction dissolved into stunned silence. "Please have a seat," I continued, gesturing to the chair directly across from me. "We're excited to learn more about your background and qualifications." Jessica sank into the chair like her legs had stopped working. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the displays showing our company's impressive metrics, the view of the city skyline, the obvious markers of success and power that surrounded her. I don't understand," she finally managed. "What don't you understand?" I asked pleasantly. "The interview process. I'd be happy to explain. We'll be discussing your experience, your vision for digital marketing strategy, and how you might contribute to Titan's continued growth." Marcus stepped in smoothly. "Jessica, your resume shows impressive experience at McKinsey and Brandwell Consulting. Can you walk us through your most significant campaign achievements?" Jessica struggled to regain her composure, her professional training warring with her personal shock. Yes, of course. At McKinsey, I led the rebranding initiative for Patterson Automotive, which resulted in a 37% increase in brand recognition and a 22% boost in sales within the first quarter. Impressive, Sarah noted. What was your strategic approach? As Jessica began explaining her methodology, I watched her carefully. Despite her shock, her professional competence was undeniable. She knew marketing strategy, understood consumer psychology, and could articulate complex concepts clearly. Under different circumstances, she would have been exactly the kind of candidate we sought. But these weren't different circumstances. That's a solid traditional approach, I interjected after she finished describing the Patterson campaign. But at Titan, we've moved beyond conventional marketing strategies. David, would you show Jessica our current Thomson Electronics campaign? David activated the wall display, revealing a real-time dashboard of our most successful current project. This campaign uses AI-driven behavioral prediction to customize messaging at the individual consumer level. We're seeing engagement rates of 89% and conversion rates of 43%. Jessica's eyes widened as she absorbed the numbers. Those metrics are unprecedented. They're typical for us, I said simply. We don't do traditional marketing anymore. We do behavioral science applied through advanced technology. The question is, can you think beyond the frameworks you learned at Wharton? The challenge hung in the air. Jessica looked around the table, clearly realizing that this interview had become about more than just a job. This was about whether she could adapt her entire professional worldview. I'd need to understand your proprietary systems better, she said carefully. But yes, I believe I could learn and contribute to this approach. Learn from whom? I asked quietly. The question's implications were clear. If she got this job, she'd be learning from me. The sister she'd called an embarrassment. The family failure who'd somehow built one of the most successful companies in the industry. Jessica met my eyes for the first time since recognizing me. From you, I suppose. From me, I confirmed. The Harvard dropout. The family embarrassment. The sister with no real career, no savings, no prospects. The other panel members exchanged glances, beginning to understand the undercurrents of this conversation. Marcus cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss the position requirements in more detail. Actually, I said, standing up, I think we should take a brief recess. Jessica, would you mind stepping outside for a moment? There are some materials in the lobby you might find interesting. She nodded mutely and left the room. Once the door closed, Sarah turned to me with raised eyebrows. Your sister. My sister, I confirmed. The one who told me this morning that I was an embarrassment to the family name and should stay away from successful people. David whistled low. That's awkward. Is it? I pulled up Jessica's performance metrics from our research department. Look at these numbers. She's genuinely talented. Her strategies are solid, her execution is flawless, and her results speak for themselves. But, Marcus prompted. But she spent 5 years treating me like a failure without ever bothering to ask what I actually do for a living. I walked to the window, looking down at the busy street 44s below. She assumed the worst about me and never questioned those assumptions, even when evidence suggested otherwise. What kind of evidence? Sarah asked. I smiled slightly. I pay for Dad's medical treatments. I bought Mom's car when hers broke down. I've been anonymously funding Jessica's nephew's private school tuition for 2 years. She's benefited from my success while simultaneously condemning me for my supposed lack of it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. So what's the plan? Marcus asked. Hire her and make her work for the sister she belittled? That seems potentially problematic for workplace dynamics. Or, David suggested, don't hire her and let her wonder for the rest of her life how different things might have been. I considered both options. Through the glass wall, I could see Jessica in the lobby, staring at the awards display showcasing Titan's achievements over the past 5 years. She was reading each plaque carefully, probably trying to understand how her failure of a sister had built something this impressive. There's a third option, I said finally. We hire her but not for the position she applied for. What do you mean? Sarah asked. I turned back to the group. She applied for Senior Marketing Director, reporting to Sarah. Instead, we offer her a position as Special Assistant to the CEO, reporting directly to me. Marcus grinned. That's either brilliant or sadistic. Maybe both. But here's the thing, she's genuinely talented. And despite everything, she's still my sister. This could be an opportunity for both of us to learn something. Learn what? David asked. She could learn that success comes in many forms, and that judging people by appearances is a dangerous game. I could learn whether our relationship can survive the truth about who I really am. Sarah nodded slowly. And if it doesn't work out? Then at least we'll both know we tried. 20 minutes later, Jessica returned to the conference room. Her composure was better, but I could see the questions burning in her eyes. Jessica, I began, after reviewing your qualifications and discussing your background with the team, we'd like to make you an offer. Her face brightened with hope and confusion. An offer? Not for the senior marketing director position you applied for, I continued. For something different. Her expression fell slightly. Oh. We'd like to offer you the position of special assistant to the CEO, with a focus on strategic initiative development and cross-departmental coordination. Jessica blinked several times. That would be working directly for you. Yes, it would. Every day. Every day. She looked around the table, then back at me. Can I ask why? I leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. Because you're talented, Jessica. Your work at McKinsey and Brandwell proves that. But you're also stuck in conventional thinking patterns that limit your potential. And you think working for you would expand my thinking? I think working with me might teach you things you can't learn anywhere else. About innovation, about questioning assumptions, about the difference between success and the appearance of success. The room fell silent again. Jessica's internal struggle was visible on her face. Professional ambition warring with personal pride, opportunity conflicting with the awkwardness of the situation. What would the compensation be? She asked finally. Marcus slid a folder across the table. The offer details are all there. I think you'll find the package quite competitive. Jessica opened the folder and her eyes widened. The salary was 40% higher than what she'd been making at Brandwell, plus equity options, comprehensive benefits, and a signing bonus that was more than her annual rent. This is generous, she said carefully. We pay for excellence, I replied. The question is, are you excellent enough to work with someone you called an embarrassment this morning? The directness of the question made everyone in the room shift slightly. Jessica's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. I was wrong, she said quietly. Obviously, I was very wrong about your situation. You were wrong about more than my situation. You were wrong about my potential, my intelligence, my work ethic, and my character. The question is, what else might you be wrong about? She considered this for a long moment. I suppose I'd find out working here. You would. The question is, are you brave enough to find out? Jessica closed the folder and looked around the table one more time. When her gaze returned to me, something had shifted in her expression. When would I start? Monday if you accept. She extended her hand across the table. I accept. I shook her hand, noting that this time her grip was firm and confident. Welcome to Titan Industries, Jessica. I think this is going to be a very educational experience. For both of us, she replied, and for the first time since she'd entered the room, her smile seemed genuine. As the interview panel disbanded and Jessica left to complete her hiring paperwork, Marcus lingered in the conference room. That was either the most professional handling of a family conflict I've ever seen, he said, or you're planning some elaborate revenge scheme. I gathered my notes, considering his observation. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's just two sisters finally getting the chance to see each other clearly. And if she can't handle working for the sister she underestimated, then she'll learn something valuable about herself. And if she can handle it. I paused, looking out at the city skyline where Titan's logo crowned our building, visible from miles away. If she can handle it, then maybe we'll both learn something about family. 3 months later, I stood in the same conference room watching Jessica present her analysis of our Q3 marketing performance to the full executive team. Her presentation was flawless, comprehensive, insightful, and innovative in ways that surprised even me. The behavioral prediction algorithms show a clear pattern, she was explaining, clicking through data visualizations with confidence. Consumer response to emotional appeals varies significantly based on time of day, recent purchase history, and even weather patterns in their location. Recommendations? Sarah asked. We should implement dynamic messaging that adjusts not just to demographic data, but to real-time contextual factors. I've drafted a pilot program that could increase engagement rates by an estimated 15 to 20%. The room buzzed with interested murmurs. It was exactly the kind of forward-thinking analysis that had built Titan's reputation. Excellent work, Marcus said as Jessica concluded her presentation. I'll want to review the implementation timeline with you next week. As the meeting ended and executives filed out, Jessica remained behind to pack up her materials. We hadn't spoken privately since her first day, maintaining strictly professional interactions during her integration period. Good presentation, I said, closing my laptop. Thank you. I've been learning a lot about the intersection of technology and consumer psychology. Learning from whom? I asked, echoing my question from her interview. This time her answer came without hesitation. From the smartest CEO I've ever worked with, who happens to be my sister. I studied her face, looking for traces of the resentment or embarrassment that had defined her attitude toward me for years. Instead, I saw something I'd never seen before: genuine respect. Jessica, can I ask you something? Of course. What changed? Between the interview and now, what shifted for you? She considered the question carefully, organizing her thoughts with the same precision she brought to her work. I think, she said finally, I realized that I'd been measuring success by other people's standards instead of actual achievement. You built something extraordinary while I was busy judging you for not following conventional paths. She paused, gathering her materials slowly. But more than that, I realized I'd been so focused on protecting my own image that I never bothered to really see you. The real you. And once I started paying attention, she gestured around the conference room, encompassing the empire I'd built. Once I started paying attention, I realized I'd been an idiot. You weren't an idiot, I said gently. You were operating on incomplete information. Information I never bothered to seek out because I was too arrogant to think I might be wrong. We walked toward the elevator together, our heels clicking in synchronized rhythm on the polished floor. There's something else, Jessica said as we waited for the elevator. I've been meaning to thank you. For what? For Tommy's school tuition. I know it was you. I kept my expression neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Sophia, I'm your assistant now. I process your personal expenses. Phoenix Academy tuition payments for Thomas Bennett, age 8. My nephew's full name. The elevator arrived and we stepped inside. In the confined space, the conversation felt more intimate. How long have you known? I asked. About the tuition? 2 weeks. About everything else you've been quietly doing for the family? About a month. Everything else? Dad's cancer treatments. Mom's car. The anonymous donation that saved the community center where we used to volunteer. Shall I continue? I pressed the button for the executive floor, buying time to consider my response. Why haven't you said anything? Because I was trying to figure out how to apologize for 5 years of being completely wrong about who you are. The elevator opened onto my floor, but neither of us moved. Jessica, you don't need to apologize for having incomplete information. You need to apologize for not caring enough to seek complete information. You're right, and I am sorry. Not just for this morning, but for years of dismissing you, years of making assumptions, years of treating you like you were less than you are. I stepped out of the elevator, then turned back to face her. Apology accepted. But Jessica, moving forward, we need to be clear about something. What's that? I'm not just your sister anymore. I'm your boss. And I expect the same excellence from you that I expect from every member of this team. She smiled, the first completely unguarded smile I'd seen from her in years. I wouldn't expect anything less. After all, I'm learning from the best. As the elevator doors closed and carried her back to her floor, I reflected on the strange turn our relationship had taken. 3 months ago, she'd called me an embarrassment. Today, she'd presented innovative marketing strategies to our executive team with confidence and competence. But more importantly, today she'd seen me clearly for the first time in years. Not as the family disappointment, but as someone who'd built something meaningful while remaining true to her own vision of success. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Dinner Sunday? My treat. I want to hear the story of how you built all this. I typed back, your treat? On an assistant's salary? Her response made me laugh. Fine. Your treat. But I'm buying the wine. Even I can afford that now. 6 months after Jessica's interview, Titan Industries announced the launch of our new behavioral prediction platform, a revolutionary system that would transform digital marketing across industries. The announcement was made at a press conference in our downtown headquarters, with Jessica presenting alongside me as the project's co-developer. Watching her field questions from reporters and industry analysts, I marveled at her transformation. The sister who'd once been embarrassed by my unconventional path had become a passionate advocate for innovation and creative thinking. The key insight, she was explaining to a journalist from Marketing Weekly, was recognizing that consumer behavior isn't just influenced by demographic data, but by real-time emotional and contextual factors. It required completely reimagining how we think about the relationship between technology and human psychology. After the press conference, our parents appeared in the lobby, looking somewhat bewildered by the media attention surrounding their daughters. "We saw the news announcement," Mom said, hugging us both. "Though I have to admit, we don't entirely understand what you've built here." "What we've built," Jessica corrected gently, "is a company that's changing how businesses connect with customers." And Sophia did most of the building while I was busy being obtuse. Dad looked around the gleaming lobby with its digital displays and bustling activity. "This is really yours, Sophia?" "This is really mine, Dad." "And Jessica works for you?" "Jessica works with me," I corrected. "She's been promoted to Vice President of Strategic Innovation." Jessica grinned. "Best career move I ever made, accepting that interview." As we walked them through the offices, showing them the teams of developers and analysts who brought our vision to life, I realized something had fundamentally shifted in our family dynamic. Not just between Jessica and me, but in how our parents saw both of us. "You know," Mom said as we concluded the tour, "I owe both of you an apology. We always pushed Jessica to be the successful one and assumed Sophia was struggling. We never bothered to really look at what either of you was actually achieving." "Success comes in many forms," I replied. "It took all of us a while to understand that." That evening, as Jessica and I worked late on the next phase of platform development, she looked up from her computer with a thoughtful expression. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Of course." This morning at the press conference, when I was talking about reimagining the relationship between technology and human psychology, I realized I was also talking about us. I raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "We spent years operating on incomplete data about each other, making assumptions based on surface observations instead of digging deeper to understand the real patterns of behavior and motivation. And now I understand that the sister I thought was aimless was actually building something extraordinary. And you understand that the sister you thought was shallow was actually capable of growth and change." I smiled, saving my work and closing my laptop. "So what's our next hypothesis to test? Whether two sisters who finally see each other clearly can build something even better together than either could alone." "I like that hypothesis," I said, gathering my things. "Want to start testing it tomorrow?" "Actually," Jessica said, "I think we started testing it 6 months ago. And the early results look very promising." As we walked out of the building together, passing under the Titan Industries logo that had become synonymous with innovation and excellence, I reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought us here. Jessica had been right about one thing in her original assessment. This job had been the most important interview of her life. Not because it launched her career, but because it forced her to confront her assumptions about success, family, and the dangers of judging people by appearances. And for me, it had been the most important hiring decision I'd ever made. Not because Jessica was exceptionally qualified, though she was, but because it proved that sometimes the best way to change someone's mind about you isn't to argue with them or prove them wrong. Sometimes the best way is simply to give them the opportunity to see who you really are. The city lights twinkled below us as we walked to our cars, two sisters who'd finally learned to see each other clearly. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new innovations, new opportunities to prove that the most powerful transformations happen when people are brave enough to question their assumptions. But tonight, it was enough to know that the family embarrassment had become the family success story, and had brought her sister along for the journey.